Hello and welcome back to another video. We have the August ScrawlrBox here. It's fresh through the letterbox. We're not going to go on with any drivel. We're just going to get straight into it. It feels like quite a light box today, and I think I heard the rattle of pencils, so I'm interested to see what's in there. So straight away, let's have a look at the featured artwork there. Oh, very, very nice looking building. Oh, we might have markers potentially, actually, looking at this artwork. Very nice. I love the line work on this. Interesting style. So this is the featured artist for this month's box, Willie Watt, an architect and director at the award-winning Nickel Russell Studios. And their socials are just at the bottom there, which I will be checking out after this video. Let's get into the actual parcel of supplies. Okay, so it wasn't pencils I heard, I think it's markers. So our Scrawlr sticker is just a snippet of that artwork there. Very nice, very nice. Our sweet for this month's box is an English creamy toffee. I'm not the biggest fan of toffees, to be honest, but interesting to see. I'll put my sweet rating up at the front here. And then the supplies. So I said in the last box that I didn't receive my little piece of paper telling me what supplies are in the box, and then as we went through the zine it was actually in here saying it, so we do need to flip through to the front page of the zine to see what supplies we have. So I'm going to just scooch all this over. So the first thing in here are the 6 Golda Faber Sketch dual markers by Faber-Castell. So it looks like some markers that maybe architects would potentially use. Let's have a look. What does this say? These are versatile and blendable markers, great for on-the-go sketching. Oh, very nice. We like to do a bit of plein air sketching. Very nice big markers, and they're double-ended. So let's see what ends we've got. So we have a very fine bullet nib there. Very nice. And we also have the lovely brush nib, which is always sought after when artists are using this type of pen. Very lovely. I wonder how soft that is, so we'll do some swatching after this. And we have a very nice selection of muted colours here. So we have a dark sepia, a warm grey 3, a light pigeon blue, we have a warm grey 1, and a green clay. What an interesting name of a colour, but a very nice muted set. So lovely. That I wonder if they'll blend really nicely together. Lovely. And I'm assuming these are water-based. It doesn't actually say on here, but I would imagine they're water-based. They look like a water-based marker. So we'll pop those there. Then we have the Edding 1880 draw liner in 0.1 size. So nice small-sized fine liner there, which is lovely, which we saw in the featured artwork that they've seemed to have used. And then finally, we have A5 marker paper, 10 sheets of that. So we've got that very nice thin marker paper, which will hold and blend really nicely on there. But that's the extent of the supplies. So not a ton of supplies in there, but I really hope that those markers are very, very nice to use. So let's have a little flick through the Scrawlr zine. So we have a little bit about the Scrawlr artist, which you can pause the screen here if you're able to read that. Then we have the Scrawlr tips and things to try, which as always I will read as we do the swatching of these supplies, but it looks like we can very much blend these, so that's really nice. Then we have some more Scrawlr tips, behind the artwork and some artist advice. Again, I will do a bit of an overview of that. Then we have the Scrawlr gallery, which features artwork that we as users of the box have put onto Instagram and Facebook, etc. For 2 boxes ago when we had Midas Touch, we had that lovely gold marker and the pencil/charcoal box. So some really lovely artwork in here. Some really, really lovely stuff. And then the top 3 for that box. Very, very nice. This eagle here is beautiful. Look at the detail on that. How did they even achieve that? Beautiful. But they've done multiple artworks for that box too. Incredible. I can see why these 3 were the top 3. And then the Scrawlr extra is about the graffiti castle, so I'm interested to look at that. And then finally, our Scrawlr challenge is point of view, so that very much ties into the architectural featured artwork that we received as well. So that'll be very interesting to do. I'm very curious to see how these pens work together and how well we can blend them on this marker paper. And I'm interested to see what we can come up with for that Scrawlr challenge point of view. So let's get into swatching and then we can see what we can come up with for that Scrawlr challenge. So the Scrawlr tips and things to try are quite vast for this box. As always, they do have a bit about swatching, and the best way to test colours, tonal temperature values plus drying time is to always swatch, which I very much agree with and promote. There is also a bit called fill it in. If you are colouring in large areas, try not to jump about the page and keep working from the same area. If the ink is wet on the page as you colour, it should result in a smoother colouring. Following the direction of the outline will put together the piece. Start by the edges of a section and colour using quick but gentle strokes. Mark making, you can always fill in larger areas or detail like foliage, walls and paths with block of marks for more interesting visual appearance. Use both ends of the nib for different effects. Some examples: dashes, hatches, small lines, long vertical, diagonal or horizontal lines, etc, etc. There is also a little bit about perspective, which really interested me. I liked the fact that for our Scrawlr challenge we had the challenge of point of view, so I feel like perspective really fit in that. As you can see here, this is me trying that out. So firstly, horizon line. Start with the horizon line. This is the line for which the sky meets the land or water. The height of the horizon will affect the placement of the vanishing point. Vanishing point. This is the focal point to where parallel lines appear to come together in the distance. Orthogonal lines, orthogonal, whatever. These are the parallel lines which are directed to a vanishing point, for example, from buildings and pathways, etc. Use a pin and string to help guide you if you need. Generally, objects in the distance are less defined, have softer edges and have less colour value saturation. This will give the illusion that the objects in the distance are further away. Use the foreground elements as reference to get the right proportions. Add in drop shadows. This will add contrast and visual weight to your urban sketching. There's also a little bit more on focusing on shapes to build up the sketch, to draw what you see, not what you think you see. When it comes to adding in details for architecture such as stained glass or brickwork, sometimes less is more. Giving the impression of something can work just as well as finite details and add character to your drawing. Pressure matters. For consistent flow for the marker, try to keep the pressure you apply to the page the same. A heavy hand with heavy pressure, your colours will be darker and more intense. Using a lighter pressure will make lighter marks. So like I said, the tips are very fast. And then the artist advice, there's two little bits for this bit. Let the lines flow. I always tend to draw fairly quickly as I have no patience. I really encourage people to just draw, to let go and create. The position and timing. Pick your vantage point to help pull out shadows that emphasize shapes and add interest. Think about how the sun moves and how the scene might look better at a different time of day. So onto this artwork. I actually was really heavily inspired by an old sketch I did in a moleskin sketchbook when I visited Berlin. This beautiful little quaint house that was just sat on its own on the road, and I loved the photo and I loved my inking that I did in my sketchbook. So I actually was just looking through them at the time and found this just as the ScrawlrBox arrived, and like I say, I was really inspired by it and I really wanted to replicate that, but in obviously 3D. I wanted to utilize that perspective knowledge we've just learned and apply it and create a new piece of artwork from it. And that's what you can see here. I think I managed to get all the perspective right except this little bay window section of the building. I think I struggled with getting the perspective of that because I was going away from the leading lines into the horizon and the vantage point line, and I think that's where I struggled, but other than that I think it was a really helpful way of doing this. So like you saw, I drew the horizon line, if I can spit it out, and then went off there in a bit of an array to create all my lines that I may need, and then I added more in as and when I needed them in my sketch. And there's this beautiful big tree just on the roadside of it, kind of really arching over. In my small sketch you didn't see quite as much of the tree, but I kind of made it up. And I just heavily went in with this inking. As you saw in my swatches, I did test that this ink was safe to use underneath the alcohol markers, and it definitely was, no running there, so a very good pen to have for the future. I definitely will be keeping this one to one side for when I want to use my alcohol markers again. And I just went ahead and started to ink this, and as the artist's advice said, I just kept it really loose. There was no real definition other than my main drawing lines when I was going into the perspective. Other than that, I really kept this sketch very loose, and tried to, especially with the tree, keep it very organic, and that really helped. And do you know what, having this vantage point was amazing. You have to really visualize it, but I really enjoyed picturing where this road was, how you'd have a little green verge with the tree in it, and then you'd have a little pathway, and then you would enter the fenced off area and garden of this beautiful house. And I really liked coming up with this scenery that was not in my original reference / inspiration artwork that I was working from. And I really enjoyed just making that up, and I highly recommend doing it. Draw some perspective lines on a piece of paper. You don't have to have it offset, you can have the horizon dead center on your page, but just have some fun with it. Draw loads of boxes and then kind of sketch out from those boxes where you want them to join, how you want the buildings or whatever structure you're drawing to look. I have done that in the past, where you draw tons and tons of different shapes within the perspective lines disappearing into that horizon, and then I just traced over the lines I wanted to trace, and it's amazing what shapes and strange looking architecture you can come up with. You can come up with spaceships doing it like that. It's quite an interesting technique, and I highly recommend playing with it. Just draw those lines and just have a bit of fun with it. You don't have to do anything polished, and just, yeah, like I say, have fun with it. It's really fun. So again, like I said, I am just being very organic with my line work, creating a bit of texture there on the grass verge just to make it look like there is some grass there, and just finishing up these lines with hatching and lines to demonstrate the direction of the material. And then off camera I did add a few bushes in the background because there was a bit too much blank space when I rubbed out all the lines for that, but all in all it looked good once these bushes were added. And again, I just used very loose line work on that. Then on to using these alcohol markers. They blended beautifully on this paper, very nice to blend, and a really lovely selection of these muted colours. It was very nice. So I started with the warm grey 1, just filling in that house, and then moved on to warm grey 2 to add kind of this more deep colour into the recesses and darker areas of the tree that I'd inked. And then I went in with that greeny colour, the green clay, just to add some colour into the verge, a little bit into the bark, and obviously all the foliage and the green grass around the house behind that fence, just to allude to the fact that there is grass behind there. And I think it worked really well. I went in circular motions for the foliage just to enhance the kind of inking lines that I went with, and I thought it looked really nice, and I quite enjoyed using this green. It's a lovely muted green on there. So moving on to the horizon line, I used the light pigeon blue, and I actually drew that from the horizon line into the foliage, into the road, the paths, just to kind of mute down those colours and make it look like they had faded in. I probably could have done that a little bit more, maybe not being so heavy with the greenery and the deep shadowing that I add later, as at this point I think it looked really good and very faded into the distance, but that is a lesson learned and something that I will adopt for the next time I use this technique. And then at first I wanted to fill in this background, and I started doing it like I was doing the trees, and then vastly and quickly realised that I needed to do bigger brush strokes and go much faster to get a bit more of an even colour. But I quite like that it looked a bit sketchy, but I definitely again could have learnt from that and gone with bigger strokes and quicker strokes to allow the ink to blend together and not be so streaky in the future.
And then the final touches, I was just adding the deeper colours onto the road and a few shadows here and there, and that's it. I really enjoyed this box. I love alcohol markers. I think they're great, especially with a good quality paper like this, and I think I'm going to give this box a 10 out of 10. So I hope you've enjoyed watching this, and I hope you're inspired and have enjoyed your own boxes. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye bye.